Can you imagine being a young man named Chuyu, or Good Chuyi for those who are the closest ones, and being recognized as a master cultivator in that fairy world? What do you die for? And then you reincarnate, to then return to another world and remain an intern to your goal of master, even if your real goal is to correct your cultivation path while you reach the top of the world. No, well, our protagonist did go through that. Well, in your world. His story begins by waking up very disoriented in the backyard of someone's house, very surprised that some lightning had not killed him completely, but allowed him to have reincarnated on Earth. Yu immediately got up from the ground and sat down again, crossing his legs, trying to see how much cultivation he had left. But unfortunately it was too little. He, yet very positive, thought that if he had returned to Earth in a new person, he should start from scratch as well. He got back up only to hide for a moment because he had heard someone on the other side of the fence. As soon as he tried to spy, he observed a woman in rather strange positions. Really, the girl was about to relieve herself in a bush, so after seeing her without underwear for a moment, our protagonist also came out of that bush, telling her not to be so careless. The girl quickly turned around, frightened. She was a redhead with glasses and very pretty light brown eyes. Our protagonist quickly recognized her, but the girl quickly pulled her underwear and ran out before our protagonist could tell her anything else. Alone, you realized that she was Ran and that the lightning had not only allowed her to be reborn, but that she had returned to the past where there, at that time, she was an intern and Ran was now her new boss. Acknowledging everything and remembering, he still remained calm. He made sure not to follow those same mistakes he had made. Besides that, after that tragedy he suffered at the time of cultivating, he was really lost. But, now that he had been reborn, he was going to change his future. With that said, lightning struck him next to him. Luckily, he managed to dodge it, so his priority list changed a bit. The first thing was to stay alive, and the second, to be able to change their future. His phone rang at the end of his mental list, so in addition to wondering who was calling him, he took his cell phone out of his pants pocket and answered. He greeted, who was apparently his vice principal, but he cut in a not very nice way, shouting all over the ear of our protagonist where he was, since the director of the school was about to arrive, and they were going to meet at the Kaisheng Hotel just at that moment. Without wasting any more time, Yu shot out to the point of the encounter. Once there, he entered the room where his friend was, thinking that he remembered that in his past life he had just applied for a job at the Tai Chi Heart, so if he was in that hotel, his application for that job must have come out successfully. As soon as he went a little deeper into the room, he realized that the one who was there, apart from his friend, was the girl who was doing her business in a bush. The friend wasted no time introducing him to the new principal of that school and ordered Yu to come before her. Yu couldn't say a word, so his friend got close enough to say yes, she was pretty cute, and besides that she would be his new boss. Although Yu was not 3 months away, he could get some good recommendations if he performed well in front of Principal Qin. Finished telling him that, the friend spoke loudly, introducing Yu to his new boss. He let him know that he was the tutor of class number 18 and had been an intern for a month before the holidays. The director who made needs in an incredibly annoying bush greeted Yu. Yu, on the other hand, so casual in life, returned the greeting, making him see that everything that had happened before was a clean slate. In addition, he very kindly asked him to take good care of him, while thinking that even though he had lived for thousands of years, his face still looked a little stupid. That director who made needs in a bush let him know sarcastically that he could not wait to see his performance. That said, she turned over, leaving our protagonist's outstretched hand. Yu really thought it was pretty finished, as it seemed to have offended her greatly. The principal who made needs in a bush, on the other hand, as soon as she turned around, began to think that Yu was Yun-Yun's peeping cousin. Therefore, she had to get him out of school as quickly as possible. And although she was a little embarrassed for peeing in a bush and having him see it, she was more than happy to answer him so ugly. While Yu's friend was left with a face that he understood absolutely nothing of what had happened. Yu was grateful that she had finally left, while remembering that the director who made needs in a bush was the only daughter of the chairman of the Jiyuzhang Huasheng group. And it seemed that, in her past life, they had some problems, so the principal who made needs in a bush had to leave the school immediately. The director who made needs in a bush, who apparently was her cousin in her previous life, had been very good to our protagonist, and in her past life, thanks to that, Yu at that time decided to have enough strength to help her in that life. Moments later, Yu's friend sends him to the hotel's large lounge for dinner. He didn't understand what he was talking about, but after asking a lot, he managed to get to the main hall, where a red-haired girl with pink eyes, red dress, and very pretty, shouted at him as soon as she saw him pass by his table to sit next to her, since she had kept the seat. Yu, seeing her, was paralyzed since in his past life he dated her, although unfortunately they did not last long. Yu quickly shook his head to focus since years had passed since it had been years and he had to think a lot more about it. Our protagonist moved at last, and as soon as he touched the chair, he greeted the girl, telling her that it had been a long time without seeing each other. The girl was a little confused about what he had said and let him know, but before our protagonist could answer her, a lady told her that this day was a formal dinner, so she did not understand how she could dress in such a way, and did not understand how the security of that hotel had let her enter dressed like that. And well, the lady had not been so wrong. Yu, while everyone was dressed in suits and dresses, he only had a blue sports shirt, jeans, and sneakers. Our protagonist, hearing that, began to look around, feeling very uncomfortable since the lady was right. Without our protagonist saying anything, the arrogant lady began to shamelessly tell the little redhead with short hair, who was named Zion Tan, that she was still young and beautiful. Besides that, her family was running many businesses and that thousands of goods will be there arranged for her. Ordinary people such as you, they were not worthy of it, so Tan could not afford to have shackles with guys like him. So, astonished and embarrassed by what the irritable lady, who had the name of Zhuo, asked her not to repeat those horrible things, but it was too late. Yu got up from that seat and let the irritable lady in the purple dress calling herself Zhuo know that she had absolutely nothing to worry about since she was sure to have found the person she loved. Yu thought as he said that to the irritable lady in purple dress who called herself Zhuo, that perhaps in his previous life no such thing would have been accepted. But now, in that life, no one could take the place in his heart except that special person. Yu walked away from that tedious table, and, as she did so, the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo asked sarcastically who the girl Yu had met had been, and that had been a very unfortunate link for her surely. Yu completely ignored her, managing to retreat completely so that he could position himself somewhere in the room where he and his thoughts were. On the other hand, Tan, between annoyed and embarrassed, asked the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo to save her comments. Yu, sitting at the table farthest from everyone, thought that compared to that world, his current strength should be that of a fairly high-level martial artist. Plus, he did not expect that applying for his previous work of his past life, that is, Tai Chi Heart, on the way he could advance incredibly fast to that point. Since strength was fundamental in the world where he was at that time, he could quietly ascend to the top without the help of absolutely anyone else. Well, on the other hand, it turned out that the formal dinner was for teachers, in a very expensive high room, and that while our protagonist was lost in thought, a short man, a little plump, was trying to get the attention of all the teachers. Once his attention was achieved, he introduced a new colleague who was entering the life of a teacher. He was Professor Chen Junyu. Previously, he had worked as a teacher in middle school, and at that time he was with all of them. In addition, in that luxurious 4-star hotel is where he lived. Junyu presented himself to everyone as such. While he introduced himself kindly, the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo was letting Tan know that Junyu was already a teacher when she was less than 30 years old. Plus, his family was a lot of money, and he praised how handsome Junyu was. The irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo told the little redhead with short hair that this was a good man for her, not like our protagonist whom she had called poor and pitiful. Is it noticeable that I don't like the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo? Perfect. While everyone was excited about the arrival of Junyu, our protagonist, on the other hand, he was still sitting at his table thinking that Junyu was his worst enemy in his past life, and everything had started by chasing the little redhead with short hair. Thanks to that, Yu was constantly abused and beaten by Junyu, and to his misfortune, he had to resign himself to his fault. Thinking of it, he didn't notice that Junyu was walking towards him. He realized once that Junyu came before him, letting him know that since Yu was still a practicing teacher, he didn't have to be nervous about his future. He added that if he needed his help, Yu could go to his hotel, and because he knew him, there was a 20% discount on the rooms for him. His enemy, that is, Junyu, thought that while he called the other professors and he only called him Yu, he helped him stay in that 4-star hotel. He could grow his reputation much faster without a doubt. As Yu took the card Junyu offered, he told him that he had heard that the president of the 4-star hotel where he was staying had retired and that there was another new manager named Chen Junfei. Yu went to the trouble to ask Junyu quite interestedly that he had not been the one left as director. As expected, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was quite offended by what Yu said kindly, so Junyu replied that apparently Yu cared quite a bit about his high society, but that a snake would always be a snake and even if he worked hard he would just be a reptile. He would never be a dragon. The slightly chubby gentleman put his hand on Yu's table, letting him know that Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair had devoted his entire life to education and Yu still had so much more to learn. With that said, he also ordered him to go and bring a chair to Junyu's purple-haired and suit idiot. Yu, unprovoked, demanded from the slightly chubby gentleman to know why he had to do such a thing, to which the gentleman replied that Yu was a simple practitioner to language teacher, and he, apparently, was the chief coordinator of the language group. On the other side, the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo kept sitting at the table with Tan, telling him that since it was possible for Yu to offend the slightly chubby lord who called himself Dongua, and if he kept like this, it was very likely that his stage of school would be very difficult. In the next scene we can see how our protagonist, with the chair in his hand, says with a smile to the idiot in a suit and purple hair of Junyu that he was not worthy of that chair. Junyu's suit and purple hair idiot let him know that only a loser like him would say something like that. He still accepted the chair, and sat on it with his wine glass in his hand. Now, the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo pointed out to Tan that Yu was not only poor, but also despicable in doing such a thing with Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot. What no one knew except Yu was that the chair that Junyu's suit and purple hair idiot had sat on had a little rather chipped paw. So not even 10 seconds passed where Junyu's purple hair and suit idiot proceeded to fall with everything and his wine glass. Once on the floor, with his suit stained by the wine that fell on him and his glass completely broken beside him, Junyu's suit idiot and purple hair immediately called the hotel service with a shout. As soon as the maid arrived, he let her know that he still couldn't believe what kind of hotel that was because they even left a broken chair lying around, something the service girl told him that the hotel belonged to him. Yu, taking advantage of the situation, decided to pay a compliment to Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot basically for everyone to hear. He let it be known that he as a teacher was really cool as he even showed all his fury against his own hotel. Thanks to that, Yu really admired the professor. Junyu's purple-haired idiot, too angry, could barely utter Yu's name. On the other hand, Yu in his head was much more than proud to use his inner strength to destroy that chair. He raised his thumb in approval to Junyu's purple-haired idiot, but before he could say anything, he turned around with a satisfied smile. Hours later, we came across the scene where Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was sitting with the other professors who said they were going to eat somewhere else, at a fairly large table. He told them he invited them if they went to KTV Dunhuang. The irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo said that this was the most expensive restaurant of all. Plus they said that the minimum consumption of that restaurant was, per person, at least 4 digits. Dong Guohao, with no interest in being contradicted, asked Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot that if he wouldn't spend a lot of money, to which Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot replied that it was only a small sum for him, and because that was the first day they were meeting, I had to take good care of them all. Dong Guohao, happy that Junyu's purple-haired suit and hair idiot did not retract praise that his office had been blessed loudly. Yu, away from all of them at his private table, was thinking that it was very true that anyone could be a teacher, but the performance of Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was too well accepted since his academic grades had also been very high. Although there was a time when a student had made him angry, as they all left the hotel for the restaurant with Yu hot on his heels, although he was still away from everyone. He kept thinking about the boy who had angered the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair. The day after that incident, the boy had been severely beaten by a group of people. It was never known what that group of people were, but Yu was pretty sure that Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair had something to do with that beating. Thinking about it and following the crowd of teachers, he didn't notice that Tan, the little redhead with short hair, was walking beside him. He realized it was when she called him by name. Yu stared at him. Tan took advantage of her and told her not to be upset with what she was going to say. But he thought it was best for her to apologize to Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair since his family had considerable power, in addition to contacts that could make Yu's life miserable. Yu, confused, told him that he did not understand why he should apologize since he had not said or done anything to offend him. He also thought annoyed that he couldn't believe that he had to apologize to Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair. Yu told himself that he was someone from the fairy world and even if he was wrong, he didn't need to apologize to him at all. Tan cut the thread of his thoughts by telling him that he was very stubborn, and that sooner or later, if he didn't apologize to Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair he would only be suffering since the world was not as beautiful as he thought. Yu did tell her that the world was a little different, but he thought that although the little short-haired redhead's heart was relatively good, she would undoubtedly prefer Junyu's suit and purple-haired idiot before anything else. He knew it. I had already lived it. And since she had already lived it, she went ahead leaving Tan alone. They had only been destined to live in two very different worlds that kept moving away. Already in the restaurant, all the teachers were enjoying the food. They were dancing and drinking their drinks. But Yu, who was also away from all of them, began to think that 2 days after that school started too and had not prepared anything for the class, which made that problem, well, pretty troublesome. On the other side, Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot was sitting next to the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo. She was flirtatiously telling him that she had heard that the restaurant was the Fan Hong's area, so she didn't think he had that much status. The irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo made him think a little, and that is that Fan Hong's was quite strong. But he was now on the outskirts of Jiujiang City, which meant, to his bad luck, that restaurant was also located on the outskirts of Jiujiang City. Once that leader arrived, he would only have to lower himself down, since in terms of status, his hotel was lower than Fan's restaurant. At first, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was unaware of that fact, but now that he was in that restaurant, he only had to hide in some corner. Thanks to life loathing him, just like I disliked the guy, Fan Hong's bodyguards showed up, making the music stop, ordering some fat guy to show up. All the teachers approached scared. Although more frightened was Dongua, since it was him who Fan's bodyguards were looking for. Once located, the leader of the bodyguards ordered him to be caught. Dongua, desperate, began to shout that this treatment was a crime, that he would call the police. He also asked where they were taking him. The leader, ignoring his pleas completely, all he told him was to try to call the police, even try to call a king. Everything would be useless to him. Dongua, caught by the bodyguards, asked Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot to help him and save him. Junyu's suit and purple hair idiot quickly stood up from his seat to face the situation. He asked the leader of the bodyguards, who was named Zheng, what the problem was with Dongua. Zheng replied that he didn't believe that he showed him a shred of respect or affection, but he still told him that Dongua had upset his boss's wife. Dongua, nervous, let her know that it had only been a touch. Besides, he did not know that she was his boss's wife. Junyu's jerk in a suit and purple hair, nervous, told Zheng that it had been just a small misunderstanding, so if he could just let it go, everyone would be quite grateful for that noble gesture. Zheng, with one hand, asked him to stop talking stupid things, even let Junyu's purple-haired suit and hair idiot know that things would not be so easy. He added to Dongua not to make things worse than they already were and to start walking. Then they wouldn't have to use brute force against them. As the bodyguards began to drag Dongua away, the Lord again asked his idiot friend in a suit and purple hair from Junyu for help between shouts. Junyu, pale, from his back yelled at him not to worry since he hadn't done anything serious, plus he wanted to know how much power Fan had. With that said, a pregnant teacher ran towards Yu, quite scared. Yu, as a gentleman he was, told Professor Yang to stay behind him as he would protect her. Professor Yang happily thanked him to immediately leave behind his back. On the other hand, the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo let our protagonist know very sarcastically to stop saying stupid things. He had always been a coward, but now, in that situation, he was taking advantage to become the hero. Ignoring her, Yu began to walk to Fan's bodyguards, stopping where Zheng pointed at him. Everyone was already there by the time the girl with brown hair, well-structured, and dressed in a rather provocative way, pointed out to Fan, who was a rather muscular guy with black hair, brown eyes and easy smile, that Dongguo had been the one who had touched her ass. You'll say that would be Fan's most distinctive thing, but the truth was his white lock. That was what stood out. While Dongguo understood that he was more than lost in taking a good look at Fan, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was crossing his fingers that they would come out of there complete. Fan introduced himself by saying that this was his territory and it seemed to him that someone was looking for him. Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot quickly intervened, letting him know that it had all been a misunderstanding. Plus, he expected and considered the issue. Fan changed his mood quite quickly and started yelling to ask Chen Huiking if he even dared to go in front of him to ask for some respect. Chen Huiking was the father of Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot, so Junyu understood what he meant. Jiujiang City was just a small pub in Jing Province, so Fan's true status was even bigger than just a restaurant. Our protagonist began to think that the business of the father of Junyu's purple hair and suit idiot was just a hotel, so even if his idiot son asked him for help, he could not help him at all. On the other hand, Fan's girl took advantage of the moment to give Dongguo a good slap and call him fat. Once on the ground, Dongguo he begged Fan for forgiveness. Fan, smiling again, let Junyu's purple-haired suit and purple-haired idiot know not to say that he didn't show any respect to his father, as soon as he broke both of Dongguo's arms, he would let them out without any problems. The idiot in a suit and purple hair from Junyu started trying to refute him, but the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo came out telling Fan that they were teachers, so he couldn't be doing so much to them since they would report all that to the media. Fan, not at all astonished, said to the irritable lady in purple dress who called himself Zhuo that he didn't know that they were a group of teachers. Seriously? He really didn't know. She smiled even more to say that he had played with students, nurses, flight attendants, but had never played with teachers before. Fan looked at the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo and tan with desire, so she pointed at them to let Dong Guohao know that his arms could be saved if they left those two to accompany him for a night. Immediately the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo, incredulous, called him a bastard and told him that what he was doing was a complete crime before the law. Fan completely ignored her, just like everyone else did, and told his bodyguards to treat them well since they were two beautiful girls. Quickly, his bodyguards reacted, heeding his order. The irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo thought that everything was over there since not even the idiot in a suit and purple hair of Junyu could help them, let alone speak because she didn't even dare. Help came to the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo from whom she least expected it. Yu, without thinking twice, came to Tan's rescue, repeating to Chief Fan that everyone was having fun, therefore he could let it go. Fan. He immediately changed his countenance and asked Yu how stupid the boy was. Tan tried to talk to our protagonist to close the peak, but Yu jumped ahead and replied to Fan that it had not been the fault of the teachers, so he did not understand why to get upset and humiliate those beautiful teachers. Fan's bald bodyguard didn't want to listen to him anymore, so he yelled at him to go fry asparagus while throwing his fist at his face. The bald bodyguard's fist did not even reach our protagonist's nose since he had stuck his in his face first. The bodyguard flew out to fall on a table, breaking it into pieces thanks to Yu's strength. Our protagonist let the bodyguard know that there was no problem in insulting someone, but he had made the mistake of having insulted a teacher, and teachers should not insult them. The little redhead with short hair began to get sentimental about what our protagonist had said, but before he even said anything, Fan laughed at what Yu had said and let him know that he had already offended a lot of people, so he wanted to see how Yu was fighting him and his people. Yu, undeterred, told Fan that neither he nor his people were worth it. Hearing that, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was dying inside. He didn't understand what kind of idiot Yu was since he was talking to Fan Hongs, not an elementary school student. He also thought that Yu would not be able to fight against all those people, therefore, he interrupted anything else that our protagonist would have to say, to explain to Fan that he did not have to listen to the stupidities that came out of the mouth of the ridiculous boy since they were teachers of Sanjiang. That made Fan's ear ringing as he was surprised to learn that they were really Sanjiang teachers. Fan thought that the principal behind Sanjiang's school was too scary a person, also that many of the city leaders were students of Jiujiang City, so he could not offend the school or the creepy principal. His thoughts concluded, he agreed. He let it be known that he, Fan Hongs, would pay his respects to Director Guo, so everyone was free to leave, except Yu since he was the one who had injured one of his bodyguards. He added that they did not have to worry about him, since, thanks to the director, the best way to resolve that conflict was to break only one arm and one leg. Tan immediately refuted by telling her that it was impossible. They had to leave that place altogether. Yu reassured her by asking her to take Professor Yang home because she was pregnant and it was not good for her body to receive so much stress. Otherwise, he would take care of it on his own. The teachers started going out without thinking twice. The little redhead with short hair was the only one who told Yu to resist as she was going to try to call the police. As soon as they closed the door after all the teachers managed to get out, 4 bodyguards surrounded our protagonist. While Fan hugged his girl, he told Yu that he saw that he knew how to fight, therefore, he had to let his bodyguards have fun with him for what was left of the day. With that said, a guy with scars on his face came into the room. He tore off his shirt while telling our protagonist that he had good skills, however, for him his skills were only ordinary. The guy's name was Ahu, but we're going to call him Ahu, the boxer rips off shirts. Well, Ahu, the boxer tears off t-shirts, began to tell Yu that he used to practice boxing from the underworld. Therefore, he was going to see how many blows our protagonist could withstand. Yu blurted out that he said the typical villain phrases in novels, and it was those who tragically lost. Ahu, the boxer tears shirts, he got quite upset, so while throwing a blow at him, he sent him to fry asparagus. Yu didn't let him reach him, so he kicked and sent him flying. Fan, on the other hand, was thinking that after so many years for the first time there was someone who dared to challenge him. So if they left him like this, it would mean a total embarrassment to him. Fan deigned to shout to our protagonist that there was no one who could save him. After that, he ordered his men to sacrifice him. The first one who dared to throw himself with everything and his knife for our protagonist. You told him that it would not be possible to even hit him. With that said, he hit each of Fan's bodyguards, leaving them all on the floor, leaving him without a single scratch. You, seeing them, thought that they were all only superficially injured, so it seemed that things were not going to be as easy as in their world. Fan and his girl were stunned to see such a scene. Fan's thoughts were that our protagonist looked like an old man he had saved in the past. The old man had promised him 3 things, then, among all those things, 3 of his competitors died in the most mysterious way possible. Even so, stunned, Fan asked Yu, after returning to the reality of his thoughts, if he was not one of them. Yu did not deign to answer, but as he walked to the exit of that restaurant, all he did was pat the wall. Fan was confused until he saw the entire palm framed on the wall. Yu had left, with delicate strength, his entire hand marked on the wall. Fan regarded it as a warning. As his soul left his body, the leader of Fan's bodyguards asked his boss if the boy was even human. Another asked him if he wanted to seek revenge, to which Fan gave him a good slap, shouting if he was crazy or maybe he wanted to kill him. Fan ordered Zhang to go and ask for Yu. Well, he really called him a knight. He also told Zhang that from now on he would respect him even more than he did. If Yu was really that kind of person, then Fan would have a new window full of valuable opportunities. At nightfall, we are sent to a scene where the little redhead with short hair was quite nervous, while the irritable lady in a purple dress who called herself Zhuo tried to reassure her, telling her that the police would be there soon. The little redhead looked at her as if she were crazy, and hysterically pointed out that it had already been more than an hour when it took at most 3 minutes to get from the police station to where they were. The short-haired little redhead and the irritable lady in the purple dress who called herself Zhuo were able to continue fighting, but Yu's voice asking why they were still both there left them speechless. The one who recovered the fastest was the little redhead with short hair. She asked him if he was okay, to which our protagonist told him that he had told Fan that if they wanted to do something to him. He also told him that he was a living person teaching them the way of knowledge. Then from there Fan was so convinced and enlightened by his words that he let him go. It was more than clear that our protagonist was lying, and the little redhead with short hair realized as she told the professor that surely he had used the reputation of the old director. She had heard that he had a great reputation in Jiuzhang City. Yu, without contradicting her, thought that there was no need to tell them the truth since they had found a good reason anyway. Moreover, it was convenient for him. The next morning, our protagonist was in his apartment in a very simple yoga position, thinking that he really needs to quickly grow to washi. And if he did not find a place with a dense concentration of aura, unfortunately it would take him much longer to cultivate. Exhaling, he couldn't afford to waste any more time as Sanjiang School was in the suburbs and it was time to go. Our protagonist got up, bathed, dressed, had breakfast, and some time later he was outside the school thinking that since classes had not yet started, he could find a place with dense aura to cultivate. He used one of his powers to locate somewhere, and when he found it he immediately went there. When he arrived, he began to think that he could not yet use the power borrowed from the earth and the heavens. He could only use his own inner power. Likewise, he thought that in the tree where he was, that is, in the 3,000-year-old banyan tree, he was very strong. The vitality of the tree had not yet decayed. Besides, that tree attracted the aura around it, so it could be more than 3,000 years old, but it was perfect. Yu began to position himself. It was time to start cultivating. Yu, in his previous life, was in the Tai Chi sect. Naturally, Tai Chi sects were only known for their Tai Chi and their Tai Chi heart. That was the highest skill in his sect. Our protagonist, once gathered the necessary amount of wind and energy, released it, making a slight movement. All the leaves around him flew very hard, and almost also a teacher whom Yu hadn't noticed. The flying professor was surprised by all those moves of Yu. He thought that Yu was a real Tai Chi expert. Yu, satisfied, had finally moved forward. He was now in the wuxi stage, and the next stage he needed to reach was called da wuxi. As he expected, the aura of the earth was very light. Although he had too good a talent, he could not progress quickly, so he would need to find some treasure in order to reach his next stage. Our protagonist thanked a very old man in his head for everything he had taught him. Yu knew that by borrowing his aura he would be able to level up, so in his next life, he was going to have to repay him. The flying gentleman from before was seen bowing to our protagonist. Yu, confused, asked him what he was doing, to which the flying lord replied by introducing himself. He let him know that he was Mr. Guo and if he could please accept him as one of his disciples. Yu realized that the flying lord, by his surname, was the former principal of the school, but thought that Fan would kill him if any of his men saw that scene. The flying director through the air before you could tell him anything, let him know that you was a true teacher and expert. Plus he was very obsessed with Tai Chi, so, although it was too late for him to practice it, it made him very happy to do it. You, admiring those words of the flying director through the air, thought that the former flying director sincerely wanted to learn and that he was his teacher. But even so, the law of the heart was closely related to the legacy of his sect, and that legacy could not be disclosed to anyone or anyone. Moreover, the Tai Chi heart law you practiced was that of a much higher level, something like the faith of a general. Not everyone could have the opportunity to access that law or even be able to learn it. You would have to turn that someone into one of the best students, go through several tests, and at the end of it all, take an oath. So, the current situation of the flying director in the air was not really good, so that was almost impossible for him to cultivate. While director flying through the air thought that you, because it took so long to answer, was not going to accept his proposal, he was also still lost in the thread of his thoughts. The flying director kept thinking that in the land where he was now, there was a place called the underworld, and the people in that underworld had incredible skills and talents. He was quite fortunate to be able to meet someone like that. But many of the high positions that the flying director had known were far removed and far below our protagonist. So if the flying director in the air missed that opportunity to ask him to teach him and take him as one of his disciples, he was really going to regret it for the rest of his life. So, risking his dignity, the flying director again asked you to accept it because that way he would fulfill his dreams. The flying director was surprised when an impressive force passed through his entire body, running through him. Our protagonist told him that he himself had forced him to teach it, but although he could accept him as his student, only if the flying director through the air managed to learn the earth and man, would he be officially accepted as one. The flying director immediately prostrated his head on the grass, deeply thanking our protagonist, swearing that he would never fail him in giving him such a valuable opportunity. Earth and man was innate, so you worried that the flying director would not have the necessary elixir. He was also worried that it would be too hard for the flying director to reach such a level. In that mundane world, experts were divided into 5 stages: El Wutu, Wuxi, Da Wuxi, Wujiang, and Zonghai. The flying director estimated that his master was at least in the Zonghai stage. Even so, the flying director asked you if he could know his name. He let him know his name, but also told him not to call him a master since that was a bit complicated, so he just had to call him you. The flying director was exalted, denying that he could not do such a thing since those were the rules left by the ancestors. You, not knowing what else he could do, accepted what the flying director wanted. He let him know that he could call him a master, but only when they were both alone. If there was someone with them apart, he should not do it. The flying director immediately agreed. You, having made the points clear, told the flying director that one of his factions was the Tai Chi sect, but that for the time being, he did not need to know where he was. He added that with the age of the flying director through the air, he knew a suitable method of cultivation for him. The flying director was excited, asking his master where that method was, and you, without wasting time with one of his powers by touching his forehead, told him that there it was. The director flying through the air when he felt such power blurted out that it was too incredible. Our protagonist, seeing him excited, let him know with a smile that he was already done what he could do for him, so he withdrew. Walking away, the flying director thought you was becoming more and more mysterious, so clearly he was a high-level person. Therefore, the fact that the flying director became his student found it a good experience for his life. Before our protagonist completely moved away from his student, the flying director let him know that his house was not far from there, so he wanted me to accompany him to lunch. If he wasn't very busy, our protagonist stopped, turned to his disciple and accepted his offer. Moments later, you could spot a giant, beautiful house as they walked. The flying director told him when he observed that they had almost arrived that he usually lived there with his wife since their 2 children were very busy and only visited them a few times a year. Our protagonist thought that the children of the flying director were not ordinary people, just as their father was not. The daughter of the flying director, who was named Guo Zixu, was the president of the only 5-star hotel, while her son Guo Panlei was the director of the public security bureaus. The flying director knocked on the door of his house, letting his wife, Yang Huan, know that he had returned. The wife kindly told the flying director that if any student had come to see him, the flying director told his wife that Yu was not one of his students, but his teacher. Huan, confused, did not understand what the flying director meant by Yu being her teacher, but her husband stopped her before she could say anything, telling her to at least greet him so as not to look rude. Yu, to stop feeling uncomfortable, was the first to greet the wife of the flying director through the air, telling her that her husband had seen him practicing Tai Chi, and then he personally asked to be her teacher. He also told her that she could only call him Yu. On the other hand, Yu was thinking that he had heard that the wife of the flying director was once a well-known doctor. The wife of the flying director apologized for the inconvenience caused and told him that her husband, that old man, was obsessed with Tai Chi, but that he was still not expecting that his drama of that day had exceeded. Upset, an old man called the flying director through the air. That said, she invited him inside so she could prepare something to eat for both of them. Once inside, you noticed that the wife of the flying director had been injured in the air, so he let her know, wondering. The wife of the flying director turned around to face him and asked him how he knew that. You didn't answer, so the flying director asked his wife why she hadn't told him before, and demanded to know if her fracture was so bad and how that had happened. The wife, uncomfortable by her husband's attention, made it very clear that she was the doctor and knew perfectly well what was happening to her. In addition, she told him that with his age that injury could not be cured, but to trust her when she told him that there was nothing to worry about. Yu, not knowing when to close her beak, let the doctor know that the injury was not as slight as she would have believed, and it was feared that if she did not treat her in time, she would not be able to walk for another year or two. The wife of the flying director in her head was impressed that Yu had known exactly at a glance what she was suffering from, and she hadn't even told her husband. However, the director flying through the air, he was not happy. He was furious with his wife for not having said anything to him, while his wife was taking him in the face that it was ridiculously useless because if he had told him the flying director through the air he would have done nothing but cry. That said, she turned around and told both of them that the argument ended there since she needed to cook to prepare something to eat. In desperation, the flying director asked our protagonist if there was any way to cure his wife, but before he answered, the wife of the flying director came out of the kitchen telling you not to listen to the ugly old man she had as a husband. As she said that, she thought that in her years, she had met many famous doctors, Chinese doctors, she had even met cultivators, but none could do anything to help her as her injury was quite prolonged and it was impossible to cure her at that time. Yu, meanwhile, thought that the wife of the flying director was in her youth a doctor in the middle of wars, so identity was well known. Yet she let her know that her disease was not really that difficult to cure. She instantly told him she didn't believe that to be true, while her husband, on the other hand, yelled at him to believe his master, at least. The wife of the flying director told her husband that well, she agreed to let Yu help her. So without long after, her husband forced her to take a seat, while Yu touched her injury saying that it was quite easy to cure. In a little push of her energy, the wife of the flying director through the air when she felt that her injury was more than healed, thought gaping how that was possible. Quickly, the doctor asked Yu how he had done such a thing and what technique he had used, as well as thinking that he was too talented to be so young. Yu, with a smile, explained that this was just a basic skill of Tai Chi that with some modification was applied as a massage. He went from the doctor to the flying director to tell him to remember what he had just done as that should be enough for that moment. He added that the blood he had bad on his wife's ankle should have been removed by now, so the only thing left to do was massage his ankle daily for a month, as that should be more than enough. The flying director understood it and taking advantage of the fact that his wife was in the chair and healed, he told her jovially that before he had told her that Yu was his teacher and she had underestimated him. The wife, ignoring him, passed from her husband to tell Yu that she thanked him for what he had done, but felt that his talent, as he was so vast, should work at the university where she worked instead of staying at Sanjiang School. The flying director couldn't believe what his wife was saying, so she told her how it was possible that being so old she planned to her master in front of him. Yu only laughed at the sight of such a situation, and hours later, after he had eaten, the flying director raising a cup of tea, told Yu that he would perform the ancient tea ceremony. Before our protagonist told him anything, a small girl with super short brown hair, wearing a school uniform, appeared with her cell phone in her hand asking the flying director in the air what that tea ceremony was, and he was with one of his students. Seeing the scene, the girl was a little quite confused as the thing looked a bit strange, even to me. To our protagonist's bad luck, the girl recognized him and let him know by calling him a professor. The confused flying director told Yu that he had heard that the teacher in his granddaughter's class was an apprentice intern, so he did not believe for a second that his current teacher was really his teacher. Yu, embarrassed, thought that the girl, Guo Fei, even though she had called him a professor, it was all a misunderstanding for him. Fei quickly rushed to his grandfather, telling him not to be fooled by Yu since only he was an apprentice intern, And although he was a very good teacher, he had no qualification to be his teacher. The flying director was so upset with Fei Fei for what he had said that he ordered him to apologize to him immediately. His granddaughter, furious, walked towards our protagonist but not with intentions of apologizing. He told her how it was possible that he could brainwash his grandfather, to which our protagonist replied that school was about to begin. Also asked him if he had done the summer homework that he had left, since she had made him remember that he had left 10 questions for everyone in his class to solve. Fei Fei, still furious, thought that no one wanted to do her homework, and if it weren't for her grandfather, she wouldn't be in that house in the first place. After that thought, she turned her back on our protagonist to go to the exit, letting her grandparents know that her father was looking for her, therefore, she had to go. You kindly lie. He arrogantly told Fei Fei that he didn't see that he was lucky today, so it was better for her not to go out and stay at home for a while. The girl was on fire, but yes, as soon as she came out she fell face first against her entrance, making you reproach her for not having heard it. The flying director, on the other hand, was thinking about whether it was possible for you to read fortune. Hours later we met at the Sanjiang school with our protagonist dressed in a suit. Yu was thinking while in the hall of the institution that he hadn't been there in a long time. Almost hundreds of years. Now, remembering the old routines, when entering his living room there should be a little surprise or trap right at the door, which it was. A glass of water was falling with speed to stamp on our protagonist. Unfortunately for his students, he cut it off and with a smile looked at all his students, telling them that he did not believe they had missed him so much that they served him water. His students, apparently excited by Yu's arrival, began to joke with him, saying why he hadn't quit since he apparently couldn't stand any of them. Another of the boys greeted him by telling him if he wanted his father to introduce him to some other job. Yu, answering his students' jokes, let them know that if he did not successfully pass that boarding school, he would not be able to graduate at all. When our protagonist finished telling them that, he walked to his small step so he could write down on the blackboard, but even before stepping on it, he realized that that platform was full of soap and if he made a false step, he was going to fall off his buttocks. The boys were waiting for that fall. However, they were quite surprised when our protagonist was still standing, telling them that that place was impeccable, and that everyone had worked hard to leave it like that. Fei Fei was the first to regret not having seen that fall, and another guy, one with black hair, weird cut and well-dressed, let him know that he felt that with the academic qualifications of our protagonist and his experience teaching, he was not up to par for him to be his language teacher. The clean guy also added that everyone expected you to be aware of it and leave on his own. The one who had told him all this was Hu Lai, son of a Jinan district leader. We're going to call that Daddy's boy. On the other hand, Yu, with a satisfied smile on his face, thought that those boys in his past life gave him so many problems and no one wanted to help him. Sadly for others, that mistake was not going to be made again. Before even Yu could answer the daddy boy, Dong Guohao knocked on his class door, announcing that the idiot in a suit and purple hair of Jun Yu and our protagonist. From that moment on they were going to change the classes in charge. As the students gawked at each other not knowing what to say, Yu let the pair of fools know that he didn't remember agreeing to change classes as he pleased. He also asked if that had been ordered by the director who did necessities in a bush. Dong Guohao told our protagonist without an appendage of shame that he was just a practitioner to teacher. So those trivial things did not require the approval of the director who made needs in a bush, so he expected our protagonist to know how to obey orders. Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot spoke, telling Yu to be disciplined, while thinking that the students in our protagonist's class were all rich, and maybe half of those children were children of the strongest leaders in Jiujiang, so that was his chance to take advantage of them. Junyu's suit and purple-haired idiot also let him know that he and the other chubby fool had heard not long ago that his students wanted to get rid of him. The boys, meanwhile, were muttering that Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair didn't look good at teaching them, although another of the students was saying that Yu, with no family business, didn't qualify to be their teacher. On the other hand, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair asked our protagonist to pay attention to him so that he would at least recognize that courtesy on his part. Yu, with a dazzling smile, made it very clear to Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot that he just didn't like talking to people like him, to which Junyu, angry, asked if he thought only he talked for the sake of talking. Our protagonist, undeterred, replied that yes, it was very likely that the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair spoke for the sake of talking. The students in his class laughed, wondering since when our protagonist was like that. When Yu thought that everything was more than resolved, Dong Guohao annoyed reminded him that he was in a school, and could not continue to do those childish graces. Daddy's boy was the student who got up from his seat to tell the teachers that they didn't have to fight over the class, and since they both wanted to be teachers in class number 18, he would ask them a few questions, and whoever won would become their teacher. But if neither of them answered correctly, so none of them deserved to be their teacher. The idiot in a suit and purple hair of Junyu, taking advantage of the opportunity, told you that this was the request of his students, so he should not break it. Besides, the thing would get much more interesting if both bet, and the one who lost would have a punishment. But he, in his head, was 100% sure that he would not lose to someone as short as our protagonist. Grabbing some chalk and throwing them into the glass of water, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair told you that whoever lost would drink that glass with water and chalk. You, jovial, let Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair know that this bet was very light even for him, so that was not enough as punishment. You grabbed the glass with water and threw a spit at him, telling Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot that if he was going to gamble, he had to do it big. The students, Junyu's purple-haired and purple-haired idiot, and Dongua Hao, were disgusted by what you had done. But while his students thought that our protagonist didn't seem to be the same, Junyu's purple-haired idiot accepted the bet, telling him that he was more than eager to see his expression when he drank that disgusting glass. Leaving the toxic glass on the table, you let the daddy boy know that he could start asking his questions. Hu Lai, without wasting his time, threw the first question at them. This consisted of writing on the blackboard the first letters of the first part of the Tao Te Ching. The other students began to wonder what Tao Te Ching was, so they did not know which of the two teachers could answer such a question. While Fei Fei said to himself that question was really stupid, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair said loudly that just the first few letters of the Tao Te Ching was too easy, and even if he had to write the whole writing, even that was very easy for him. On the other hand, in the mind of our protagonist, he said that the teaching came from the Tai Chi sect. Therefore, he was going to let the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair write his Tao Te Ching, since outside of that, he knew each letter as it appeared in the original text. Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot, seeing you didn't proceed to write anything on his blackboard part, thought that he had already accepted his defeat. But his thoughts changed when he heard Fei Fei shout that you had already started writing. You thought that if he was going to win, he was going to win in the most beautiful and originally possible way. The daddy boy, seeing that you was writing something quite strange, announced that our protagonist was losing since he had written the first letter very badly. Although he shut his mouth when a colleague told him that, indeed, our protagonist was correct since he had written Tao Te Ching on the back. His students were astonished and began to murmur that how it was possible that there really could be a person who was capable of doing that in that world. While another girl in the room said that if our protagonist was really the teacher they had met, she also praised him as talented. Our protagonist was thinking with a smile that the Tao Te Ching descended directly from the Tai Chi sect, since it was shown to the earth by people from the Xianmen, and then it was that it became very popular. After that thought, he finished his writing, letting his students know. Everyone applauded their teacher, while the only one who did not was Fei Fei, since he began to think that our protagonist had changed since he was a completely different person from the previous semester. Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair, annoyed, made his chalk pieces. He picked up another one from the chalk box on Yu's desk when asked to write since it was his turn, but broke it again when they announced he had lost. Junyu's suit and purple hair idiot blurted out how it was that he had lost since they both had the original text, so that should be a tie. He added that just because Yu's handwriting was a little better than his didn't mean he had lost. The daddy boy, with a rather arrogant smile, let the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair know that our protagonist had written his part on the back and he had not. So if Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair could write it on the back and at the same time, then that would definitely be a tie. Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair told Daddy's boy that it was completely impossible, to which he replied to look at our protagonist's blackboard so that he would realize that it was not impossible at all. When Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair looked at Yu's blackboard, he was dumbfounded and started yelling at him that it was more than impossible and for him to write it again. Daddy's boy, who really started to like me from there, blurted out to the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair that this was not the way to behave. Therefore, he did not understand how with that attitude he wanted to be his teacher. Yu, with the bet glass in his hand, told Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot that the wood had become a boat, and everyone present in the hall had seen his loss, including Professor Dongua Hao, so he must admit his defeat publicly by taking the glass of defeat. Yu's students officially murmured that Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair was not as good a teacher as he appeared. Already with the glass in his hand, on the other hand, the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair asked Yu what he had thrown into the water, to which Yu replied that since he had agreed to bet, now he had to drink that purified water, adding that he had only poured some hot water on him, nothing else. He told him all that with a smile between macabre and friendly. I honestly wouldn't want to have our protagonist as an enemy. Not if he would make me drink water with drool, chalk, and who knows what else. You students were eager to see Junyu's purple-haired idiot drink that water, but they didn't expect any tantrums from him. Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair yelled at you that he was a cheater, and that he had put it all together with his students because, well, they were his students and they had to defend him always. Master Dongua appeared, interrupting what our protagonist was surely going to say, letting him know that yes, he had already won. Therefore it was a simple joke on his part to make the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair drink that water. You, undeterred for a second, told Master Dongguo that if he wanted to drink that water purified by Junyu's purified idiot in a suit and purple hair, I imagine that he will have said a huge no, since what they show us in the next scene is Hulai yelling at the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair that he had to be honest, since otherwise breaking his word would severely damage his morale. He also added that it was what happened with his attitude, since not long ago he had been completely determined to be the teacher of that one class. When Hulai finished giving his speech, Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair took the glass from Yu's hand and desperately drank the entire contents, only to think that he was going to make our beloved protagonist pay for all that humiliation. Drinking the contents, the idiot in a suit and purple hair from Junyu threw the glass on the floor and then ran out of that room because of the desire to vomit whatever the glass would have had. Master Dongguo rushed out after him, obviously. Yu's students let him know that he was the worst with laughter and congratulated him on such a departure. Smiling, he thanked them and possibly talked to them until after the doorbell rang for his first break. As soon as he left the room, the secretary of the principal, who was doing necessities in a bush, confronted him, telling him that she wanted to see him in her office immediately. Yu blushed, but still walked with the secretary to the principal's office that was doing necessities in a bush. As soon as he entered and sat down, the director who was doing necessities in a bush claimed him based on what our protagonist had done with the idiot in a suit and purple hair, since he could fire him at any time. She added that she now had to wait to see how severe the accident had been. Yu, with a cup of coffee in his hand, without thinking blurted out to the director who was doing necessities in a bush that had only accidentally seen something on his butt, so he asked that he not hold any grudges. The headmistress who was doing necessities in a bush immediately got worse than she was, but Yu quickly interrupted her, assuring her that she hadn't talked about it with anyone, so she didn't know if anyone had ever found out. The principal who was doing necessities in a bush tried to exhale and inhale in rhythm before she accidentally smashed the chair on the head of one of her boarding teachers and was sued for first-degree murder. She, trying to maintain her composure, chuckled to our protagonist that what was being talked about was the monopolization of students to make other teachers drink a glass with toxic content that he had made with his own hands. He added that this was the blessed problem, so how our protagonist was going to defend himself was what the director who made needs in a bush wanted to hear. Our protagonist sighed by placing the coffee cup on the desk of the director who was doing necessities in a bush. She happily began to think that this had been the mistake she had been waiting for from our protagonist to finally say goodbye. What was not expected was Yu's direct answer. Yu directly told the principal that she was doing necessities in a bush that shouldn't actually suppress her emotions because it would be so easy for her to have endocrine disorders. He added that he had seen on the headmistress's buttocks that she was kneading in a bush that there were red spots on her buttocks, and that this must be caused by her very bad mood. There, the director who did necessities in a bush lost what was left of patience, and without thinking twice threw the first thing she had at hand. That is, a book thick enough to leave someone in a coma depending on the force in which it was thrown. That done, he shouted at our protagonist that how dare he even tell him that. Our protagonist easily caught that notebook, but the director who did necessities in a bush did not let it pass. Even so, Yu asked him to calm down since he was not that kind of person, while our protagonist thought that playing pranks on the director who did necessities in a bush was too much for the poor woman. The female director who was doing necessities in a bush yelled at Yu that he should know that behind the idiot in Junyu's suit and purple hair, there was the Kaisheng Hotel, that although their relationship was not good, it was normal enough to provoke the whole family of Junyu's purple-haired suit idiot. In addition, the teacher Dong Guohao was closely related to whether our protagonist could continue in the student facilities or not. The director who made needs in a bush explained to our protagonist that in that school they had 3 indicators that they took into account for the evaluation of the inmates. The first was the valuation of the leaders of the office that consisted of 30%. The second was the valuation of the director who made needs in a bush that consisted of 20%. And the third was that the next exam, the ranking position of his class would contribute 50%. At the end of all that, you would need to have more than 50 points if he still wanted to stay in that school. Yu, quite tense and nervous, began to think that things had changed a lot and that in his past life, as long as the ranking of his class entered the top 10, it would be more than enough for him to be kept in the school institution. But now, there were so many requirements that he began to wonder also if perhaps the rules had changed because he had offended the idiot in a suit and Junyu's purple hair. Although he changed his mind when he observed the winning smile to the director who made needs in a bush. Our protagonist was annoyed, but before he could even speak, the director who did necessities in a bush kept telling him that if he managed to graduate without complications, it would help him solve his problem with Junyu's idiot in a suit and purple hair. Yu, hearing what came out of the mouth of the director who was doing necessities in a bush, quickly got up from his seat and very cheerfully agreed to the deal.